Clara and David Harris had once celebrated the happiest day of their lives at the Nassau Bay Hilton Hotel. There, they celebrated their wedding reception, toasting their futures and beginning what they planned to be a life filled with laughter, love, and happiness. But it was at this same hotel, 10 years later, that Clara stood in the lobby, her heart pounding as she watched her husband not there with her, but arm in arm with another woman. She was furious. What could she do? What would she do? Her actions from that moment would not only alter the future of everyone involved. They were so wildly unthinkable, so shocking, that visions of what she did would remain etched in onlookers' minds forever and set off a wave of consequences that seemed utterly unimaginable. Welcome back to Crime A to Z, where we detail cases and criminals from their very beginning until well after other reporting ends. Betrayal is a powerful thing. For some, it leads to heartbreak. For others, it leads to revenge. But in today's case, it led to a series of events and circumstances so unpredictable, it caught literally everyone off guard. Today, we're diving into the story of Clara Harris, the Texas dentist who used what she had at her disposal to exact revenge in the most extreme way imaginable. So sit tight. This case unfolds with surprises at every turn. And before we get started, if you end up liking how we present this case, we always appreciate any support you can give us, including hitting like, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you. Let's go. Clara Suarez was born and raised in Colombia, where she grew up with ambition and a strong work ethic. Determined to build a successful future, she pursued a career in dentistry and eventually immigrated to the United States. She moved to Texas, where she established herself as a well-respected dentist, admired for her dedication and professionalism. There, she met David Harris, a successful, charismatic, and easygoing orthodontist known for his friendly demeanor. The two quickly built a life together. They married on February 14, 1992 at the Nassau Bay Hilton, a moment that seemed to mark the beginning of a perfect future together. Together, the couple ran a thriving dental practice in Friendswood, Texas, operating multiple offices with plans to expand even further. At home, they raised their twin sons, Brian and Bradley, born in 1998, along with David's 16-year-old daughter, Lindsay, from his previous marriage. To outsiders, David and Clara had a picture-perfect life, a beautiful home, a loving family, and successful careers, earning them about $650,000 per year, equivalent to about $1.2 million when adjusted for 2025. Everything was going well, until it wasn't. David started getting fit, losing weight, and spending unnecessary time at the office. He was having an affair, and it wasn't just a fling. He was seriously involved with a receptionist at the couple's practice named Gail Bridges, and the pair were not exactly subtle about it. From Gail bending over to pick something up, giving David a little rear-view show in the process, to her being inappropriately invited to management meetings, to her claiming the front seat in David's Suburban during group lunch outings, the staff found it awkward and disrespectful, especially since many were loyal to Clara. One of the staff members finally approached Clara on July 16, 2002, alerting her of the affair. Clara was devastated. She went out and got a makeover in an attempt to be more attractive to David. Then she confronted him. David acknowledged that he was having an affair. Clara told him that he had embarrassed her with their staff and said she wanted them to start marriage counseling. David apologized and assured her that he would end it. Clara then promptly fired Gail and began a campaign to win back her husband's affection. She joined a gym, hired a personal trainer, bought sexy lingerie from Victoria's Secret, and consulted with and made a deposit to a plastic surgeon regarding liposuction and breast enhancements. She also planned to change her demeanor to agree with everything David said, a trait that David told Clara that he found attractive about Gail. Shortly afterward, David asked Clara if he could take Gail to dinner to get closure. The plan was that he would meet Gail on July 24, 2002, and end it for good. But Clara wasn't convinced. Suspicious, she hired a private investigator to follow David that night. It was reported that she had also retained the private investigator because she heard rumors that Gail was seeing another woman. So the private investigator would come in handy for investigating that as well, with Carla hoping that if she could show David evidence that Gail was involved with a woman, he would no longer be interested in her. The private investigator followed David to his closure meeting with Gail, then notified Clara that David had indeed met up with Gail, but not at a restaurant like he had promised. Instead, they had gone to the Hilton Hotel, the very place where Clara and David had celebrated their wedding reception, and they were still there. So, Clara got in the car, bringing her 16-year-old stepdaughter along with her. When they arrived at the hotel, they immediately spotted Gail's SUV, recognizable from her time working at their dental practice. Clara wasted no time. She got out and vandalized Gail's car, severely keying the sides and ripping off or bending the windshield wipers. Clara and Lindsay then went inside to the hotel lobby, but David and Gail were nowhere to be found. When they asked the front desk, they were told that no one by those names was checked in. Determined to flush him out, Clara called David's cell phone, telling him that one of their twin boys was sick and that he needed to come home. It worked. Moments later, David emerged with Gail, the two of them holding hands. Furious, Clara lunged at the couple. David was able to defend himself, but Gail was not. Clara grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head onto the marble floor, ripping her blouse in the process. Several men tried pulling Clara off, but she was in a rage. She was able to slam Gail's head to the floor again before finally being removed. Hotel staff broke up the fight and forced Clara and Lindsay to leave. The staff escorted them to Carla's Mercedes, while David and Gail headed to Gail's now vandalized SUV. But Clara wasn't done. Behind the wheel of her Mercedes-Benz, she was fuming. She began circling the parking lot. As David walked toward his vehicle with Gail, Clara hit the gas, accelerating toward the couple. With the Mercedes hurtling toward them, Gail was pushed into the SUV just before the Mercedes rammed into David with full force. The impact launched him 25 feet across the parking lot. At that point, the private investigator that Clara had hired to follow David began video recording. And Carla was still not done. She circled around and hit David a second time, this time running him over. Then, she circled again and ran over her husband a third time. But Carla was still not done. After having run over her husband 3 times, she backed the car up and ran over him backward a 4th time. After that, some witnesses claimed she proceeded forward again and ran over him a 5th time, while others claimed that when she reversed over him, she stopped, leaving the car resting on top of him. Then, she jumped out, leaned over his body, and began sobbing over him and stating, "David, look what you made me do." Throughout the horrifying ordeal, David's 16-year-old daughter Lindsay was in the front passenger seat, witnessing everything unfold and pleading with her stepmother to stop. Nearby witnesses were also helplessly screaming. David Harris died at the scene, and Carla was arrested. The wealthy dentist was out on bail within a day. Her legal team wasted no time preparing her defense, while prosecutors built their case around the brutal footage along with eyewitness testimony. The case immediately grabbed national attention. A respected dentist, a public affair, and a murder caught on tape. It had all the makings of a courtroom spectacle. When the trial began, the question was not whether Clara had killed David. That was undisputed. It was instead whether the jury would see it as murder or even premeditated murder, since she knew of the affair well beforehand. It would take over a year for Clara to stand trial as legal teams gathered evidence, reviewed the shocking footage, and debated whether her actions were fueled by premeditation or uncontrollable emotion. During that time, opinion about the case was divided. Some sympathized with the sheer anger that comes with betrayal, even considering Clara a hero. Others believed her actions were clear, calculated revenge. At trial, Clara's legal team faced an uphill battle. Already a challenge to defend someone accused of steamrolling their spouse 1 time, they faced defending someone who circled and repeated the act 5 times. Clara claimed it was all a terrible accident. She testified that when David and Gail walked out of the hotel, she got back in her car with her stepdaughter and drove around the building, intending to crash into Gail's SUV, not David. But as she circled back, she said she'd unexpectedly saw David walking, and that by the time she noticed him, it was too late to stop. She insisted she never meant to hit him. She denied running over David more than once, but the prosecution noted that each time she circled, the car visibly lifted, as if rolling over something solid. Clara insisted that the bumps seen in the video were from her car going over a curb, not his body. And the video wasn't the only recorded evidence. 2 days after the killing and 1 day after she posted bond, Clara had a phone call with a private investigator she had hired to follow David. In the recorded conversation, she was more concerned about what had been captured than with what happened.
We did tape record everything. As soon as we get that information, we can make that available to you and your attorney. Videotape? Yes, ma'am. We have everything, but we don't have it in our possession because of, the incident that occurred. So he was there through all the tragical part? The investigator did video everything because you hired us to video the subject.
Although Clara had hired the private investigator to get video proof of her husband's affair, she seemed unaware that her own actions had also been caught on tape. She was now rightfully concerned that every moment, along with its consequences, had been preserved in such detail. So she pressed to find out exactly how much had been captured.
There was the videotaping of them going into the hotel, and there was the videotaping of when the tragedy developed. You don't have the tape, that's what you're telling me, so all the information the police took everything because it's a criminal case.
Clara remains calm throughout the conversation, but never once claims that it was an accident.
Maybe just upset you enough to where, you just lost it. Right. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you. This is a horrible tragedy. I know. Are your twins okay? They are okay up to this point.
Clara also had one final piece of business to settle with the private investigator. With her husband dead, the job had ended early, so she figured that should come with a refund.
One last thing is, I had paid, obviously, for the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah. And I didn't get to read into your contract agreement whether there was going to be a cancellation refund or anything. The way the contract reads is if the client shows up on the scene, like you did, all retainers and monies are non-refunded, and I'll tell you why. As you found out the hard way, when there's a client on the scene, it jeopardizes our investigators, it jeopardizes the subject, and it jeopardizes the client.
This audio conversation never made it into court, but it highlighted Clara's state of mind in the aftermath of the incident. Clara's stepdaughter Lindsay, who was in the front passenger seat, directly contradicted Clara's story. She testified that before hitting David, Clara said out loud, "I'm going to hit him." Lindsay recalled screaming, "Stop, you're killing him," as her father tried to escape. She said David tried evading the vehicle and also pleaded with Clara to stop, but she said Clara was very determined. Her testimony was emotional and devastating, and Clara sobbed into her hands as she listened. Multiple eyewitnesses backed up Lindsay's account, confirming that Clara ran over David multiple times. The hotel manager testified that it was 3 times. The front desk manager said that she ran over him 3 times, then backed over him a 4th time. The night manager saw her do it twice. And 3 tennis players who witnessed the incident each testified that it was multiple times. But the medical examiner's report was less clear. While witnesses testified that Clara ran over David multiple times, the examiner only found 1 definitive tire mark on his body. The defense used that to argue that she only hit him once. They also claimed that her Mercedes did not have the turning radius needed to hit him more than once. The defense even hired a private consultant to recreate the scene and prove Clara only ran over David once. The prosecution countered by bringing in a police officer who pointed to a photo with a second tire track that led directly to David's body. When confronted with that overlooked tire track, the consultant could no longer support the defense's argument, and the recreation was ruled inadmissible. In a final attempt to defend herself, Clara decided to take the stand and testify against the advice of her attorneys. That decision backfired. Since Clara took the stand, her original police interview, which had previously been ruled inadmissible, was now allowed in court, and only part of that interview was played. The jury was able to hear Clara say, "I wanted to hurt him," but they did not hear the part where she later said, "I didn't want to kill him." The pressure in the courtroom was intense. At one point, Clara's attorney collapsed from the stress. The judge called a recess and he was taken to the hospital before later being released. But in the end, the prosecution had the most important evidence in the case, the video. They argued that it showed that this was not a crime of passion, but a deliberate act of murder. In February 2003, Clara Harris was found guilty for murdering her husband, David Harris. The jury determined that she acted under sudden passion, a legal distinction in Texas that reduces the sentencing range for murder. Normally, a murder conviction carries a sentence of 5 to 99 years or life, but a sudden passion ruling lowers it to 2 to 20 years. As a result, Harris received the maximum sentence allowed under the provision, 20 years in prison, along with a $10,000 fine. David's parents, Gerald and Mildred Harris, initially supported Clara, even requesting leniency during her trial and advocating for her probation. However, their relationship deteriorated after her conviction. One primary point of contention was the custody of Clara and David's twin sons. On the day of her sentencing, Clara informed her in-laws that she intended to grant custody of the boys to her neighbors instead of to them, which came as a surprise and disappointment to David's parents. Disputes also emerged over the distribution of David's estate. Clara received a substantial portion of the estate, estimated to be in excess of $1 million. David's parents believe it should have gone to their grandchildren. This led to David's parents filing a wrongful death lawsuit against Clara, citing loss of companionship, mental anguish, and financial support. In 2007, a jury awarded them $3.7 million in damages. In 2004, Clara sued her former attorney George Parnham, alleging that he overcharged her, mishandled her defense, and prioritized his own self-promotion over her case. She claimed that she paid him over $235,000 despite a verbal agreement of just $75,000. She also accused him of sharing her confidential financial info with other lawyers without her consent. In 2008, a jury ruled against Clara, and she was ordered to pay Parnham over $70,000 in unpaid expenses and nearly $400,000 in legal fees. Clara Harris was incarcerated at the Mountain View Unit in Gatesville, Texas, where she worked on converting school textbooks to Braille for blind students. Her twin sons, who were 4 years old at the time of her imprisonment and with whom she maintains a good relationship, were placed in the custody of David and Clara's close friends and neighbors, and they visited her about once a month. Clara was denied parole twice before it was eventually granted in November of 2017, when she was in her early 60s. She was released in May 2018 after serving 15 years of her 20-year sentence. In a 2023 interview, Carla, now virtually unrecognizable, expressed a strong desire to remain out of the public eye. While she spoke extensively with a reporter, she declined an on-camera interview, emphasizing that she wanted to live a quiet, normal life free from the judgment and ridicule of her past. There is no report of her having made any apologies or acknowledgments during that interview or at any other time. In the end, Clara was not the first to be consumed by the rage of betrayal, nor will she be the last. But do you think that's what it was? Or was it a premeditated decision to exact revenge on her cheating husband? And regardless, did she get what she deserved? Let us know in the comments. And if you like how we presented this case, we really would be grateful if you please hit like and definitely hit subscribe so you get notified about our future videos.